Hello, my name is Leslie and I've been running a Science Access course for nearly 25 years. I've also worked for CAVA as an external moderator for about 12 years and have learned a great deal from visiting and working with other colleges. I've seen the grading process go through a lot of changes in 25 years, from marking everything numerically with a single average percentage converted to a single overall course grade at the end, to the system we use now. This will be changing again in the next few years, but the most urgent task is to remove numerical marking from the current grading system. And my aim is to provide some guidance and suggestions regarding how you could go about this. I'm going to start off by giving you a quick background to the what, when and why, and then I'll move on to the how. If you deal with the process in a number of stages without trying to tackle everything at once, it will make it easier. I can't pretend it'll be a quick and easy process, but I hope to provide some ideas that will help you understand how to achieve the removal of numerical marking that you may be very reluctant to let go of. This and the next couple of slides are taken directly from QAA's website. There's a link at the top if you want more information. So I'm not going to read them to you. Basically, numerical marking has got to go before the start of the next academic year. The reason for this requirement is that although QAA agreed to allow numerical marking in some subject areas such as maths and science, since the new grading system was first implemented, it hasn't been used clearly or consistently alongside the non-numerical system. Numerical marking isn't used widely and is very difficult to implement appropriately, so QAA have now approved its removal. Now I'm going to take you through a suggested process for redesigning assessment to avoid numerical marking. I don't teach maths myself, but carry out graded assessments in biology and chemistry, which include exams, and have developed a non-numerical grading process which works well. The starting point is the unit reference sheet. Remember, this is a statement of what you are going to assess and how. You can effectively teach what you like, how you like, but the students must be assessed according to the URS to show what they've learned. Now is a good time to review the URS. First, does it do what you want it to do in terms of learning and associated assessment evidence? Secondly, take a close look at your assessment criteria. Are they an accurate description of the minimum performance required to pass? Then have a look at the grade descriptors. Have you got the right ones for the aspects of performance that you want to assess? And the style of assessment. There are a lot of alternatives to exams, although these are most definitely the most popular assessment in maths and the style of assessment that I'm going to be focusing on. For science units, structured question assignments can also work well. Finally, if you can see any aspects of your URS that could do with alteration, then consider applying to CAVA for a minor modification. This is not a difficult process. The next thing to do is to make sure that you're familiar with the current format of the grade descriptors you're going to use. They are modified from time to time, so check the QAA website for the most up-to-date wording. Along with GD7, GDs 1 and 3 have been the only ones where numerical marking could be applied up to now, but you may wish to consider others, particularly if you're changing your style of assessment. It's worth looking closely at the components and selecting those which best express your opinion about a particular grade on a particular unit. Don't choose too many, as you need to be able to feed back against all that you choose. Remember, it's always easier to choose the middle grade as a unit grade if you have an odd number of descriptors. Otherwise, the quality grade dominates. Now on to designing assessment materials. My recommendation from many years of working out how to do this, particularly for exams, is to have two separate sections to your assessment. And the first of these is the pass section. It's easiest if this section has nothing at all to do with grading and doesn't provide any opportunities for grading. Passing the assessment criteria is separate from grading, so start by working out the minimum performance level required for your assessment criteria. Make sure you're assessing at level 3. Don't let it slip into level 2, and don't over-assess. Be clear to students how many times they need to demonstrate competence in order to pass, particularly in exam questions. I would recommend using questions identified by assessment criteria. Students and tutors alike seem to find this model easy to understand, but remember, it's only my advice from my own experience. If you come up with an idea of your own that achieves the same outcome, in other words, non-numerical grading, give it a try. I would suggest using a series of questions numbered by our assessment criteria, which allow students to show that they know something or can do something at the minimum level. For example, bearing in mind that I don't teach maths, you could have assessment criterion 1.1, accurately carry out addition of 10 numbers, and direct students to complete them all correctly in order to pass, followed by the questions, and if they pass them all, they've passed that AC. Assessment criterion 1.2 might be accurately carry out some other mathematical operation, and on this occasion you might feel that getting 3 out of 5 right would be enough to pass, and if they do, they pass. And then it's very simple for students to understand what they've got to do to pass. The design of the pass questions is important. They must be sufficient to enable students to demonstrate competence at a pass standard, but it helps if they're no more than that. The pass section is marked first. If there's doubt over any of the assessment criteria, a quick look at the second section, which will be merit distinction questions, may determine whether there's evidence there which could be used for the pass section. Looking at the design of the second section, this will depend in part on your choice of grade descriptors. You're not asking students to meet assessment criteria in this section, and the assessment applies overall to the whole assessment, or, if it's the only assessment, to the complete unit. Obviously, the context of the questions in this section is the same as for the assessment criteria, but you don't need to identify those. The merit distinction section needs to give students the opportunity to demonstrate the components of the grade descriptors and goes beyond the level of can they do it. Here you can ask questions which integrate a number of assessment criteria or learning outcomes. You can challenge them with unfamiliar examples, ask them to apply techniques in a more complex way, or present them with scenarios where they have to extract information in order to solve a problem. It doesn't matter how many questions you have in the second section, but you do need to be careful that students have enough time to complete the whole assessment, given that this is probably going to be an exam. Students need to understand that they have to pass the assessment criteria before they will get any feedback from their performance in the merit distinction section. I personally have found A-level exam questions to be very useful in providing ideas and a base structure for questions in this section, as they are designed to differentiate between abilities. The design is not asking students to show they can do what their ACs require, but is asking for judgments such as how well they can do it, how well they can explain what they've done, can they solve a problem using information in different formats, such as graphs, charts, tables, can they accurately work out the problem in a scenario, and how well they can apply techniques to solve the problem they've identified. Now on to the actual assessment process. You might want to trial your first design as a mock exam or other formative assessment to make sure that both tutors and students get it first. Once the formal assessment has been completed, the actual assessment and grading process should be quite straightforward and is in 2 stages. First of all, go over all the students' pass sections to determine whether they've passed. If they have passed, then go on to the second section and complete the grading process. Give feedback against the grading descriptors and their components using the language in the QAA definitions. If they haven't passed all the ACs, then leave the second section unmarked. After checking to see if it contains any evidence for ACs not passed in the first section, set resit questions only on those ACs which haven't been passed, and when or if these are passed, return to the original merit distinction section and complete the grading and feedback. So what sort of grading performance are you looking for? Well, this part should probably form part of your team discussion at the initial unit assessment design stage when choosing the most suitable grade descriptors and components. It's easier to consider and identify what sort of performance you're looking for before you write questions than trying to fit your expectations to existing material. This slide suggests from my personal experience how the 3 grade descriptors allowed with numerically assessed units thus far could potentially be used to interpret performance in the merit distinction section of an assessment. Grade descriptor 1 is about the understanding of a subject. Getting the right answer may be no more than a pass. It does depend on your assessment criteria. So in order to assess for grade descriptor 1, it needs to be more about extracting a problem from a scenario or other information, and or including explanations of the steps in a calculation or a solution on the way to getting the right answer. Grade descriptor 3 is about the application of skills, and this is a particularly good descriptor for maths because it recognises how well students are using techniques and methods and how they are demonstrating levels of accuracy and precision. But do be careful to select the best components here. And then of course you've got grade descriptor 7, which appears on all assessments for the overall quality. Component A in grade descriptor 7 is about logical and fluent structure, and this is useful for recognising the use of mathematical conventions and for using clear layout in their work. Component C, which is about taken as a whole, is also useful because this gives you a general performance assessment. And a final comment on feedback. Obviously, you'll give feedback on which assessment criteria have been passed, but it is also important to feedback on the individual components of the grade descriptors and to give students guidance on areas for improvement, which might be something like how logically the problem solutions are laid out and the levels of accuracy and precision that have been used and so on. If you have any queries regarding my advice, please contact CAVA and they can put you in touch with me. If I can see your unit reference sheets and current assessments, I may be able to give you some specific suggestions to help with the removal of numerical marking. I can't, however, do it for you. I hope that this has been helpful and that you now find the process somewhat easier.